Well, this is going to be a short video on how to remove the cylinder head on a Tomos A3 engine. A35 engine is very similar, and you need the same tools, which is 11mm socket, 40mm spark plug socket, and a torque wrench, which will also fit your chosen 11mm socket for doing it back up again. Also, a small Phillips screwdriver, which is handy for a trick I'll show you for getting everything back together again. So let's go and take a look at the engine. So the reason why you'd want to remove the cylinder head off a two-stroke engine is normally for decoking purposes. By that I mean basically cleaning the inside of the combustion chamber to improve performance. Over time you get carbon build up inside the combustion chamber because you're essentially burning petrol and oil. With modern synthetic two-stroke oils mixed at the correct ratio with the petrol for your engine, it doesn't build up as much as it used to on older engines that run quite a rich oil mix. So the spark plug's out because it's much easier to do it with the cylinder head still attached to the engine. And there are 4 M7 nuts and washers that hold the head to the barrel via the studs. Now what can happen is there's a small amount of thread sticking up above the nuts. This can become rusty, so what happens is when you try and undo the nuts, it pulls the studs out of the barrel, which can be a bit of a pain. So have a good look first. If they are particularly rusty, try and clean them with a small wire brush, put some penetrating oil on them, plus gas or whatever you've got. Let it soak in and then undo them with the 11mm socket. M7 nuts are a bit of an unusual size. They're actually used on the rear wheel as well on the Tomos, as well as on the cylinder head, so it's best to have a few anyway, just in case you lose some, because they're not something that you kind of regularly pick up maybe a local hardware store. You can buy them online though, so it's not an issue. So once you've got all your 4 M7 nuts and washers removed, very carefully pull off the cylinder head from the studs. It can be a bit tight. Give it a wiggle, it will come off. And there you go. You can see on mine there's quite a lot of carbon built up inside it. The reason for this is pretty much one of my test engines for making performance manifolds for the carburetor. I've managed to get them to a point where I can run a 56 jet without them four-stroking, purely by porting and focus, using a large diameter inlet manifold over the stock one. What happened with this bike was I'd swapped some manifolds over, put a stock one back on, but didn't change the jet size. So I was running, I think at the point in time, a 54 jet instead of a 50 with a stock manifold, so it was over fueling quite badly. Just did a couple of local trips with it to the shops, pulled the spark plug out and kind of realised my mistake. So I've got to decoke it now. So I'll take this to the bench and we'll show you what it should look like. Right, well there's the head we just removed. Here's one of my spare ones. You'll notice that these are not stock, they've been skimmed on the lathe. Can't remember the exact figure because it was done a while ago, but it's taken the compression ratio from 9 to 1 up to about 10.5 to 1. This one has already been cleaned, so I'll probably actually put this one back on again, and I'll show how to clean this maybe in a future video, time permitting. So one thing to be aware of, these do have a left and right and up and down. I have seen sometimes people have put them back on like that, and the fins don't line up, so they go that way, not that way. Also, something I need to address is there's a bit of carbon built up on top of the piston, which I need to clean off. The best way to do that is get it at the top dead center somehow, and then use some kind of solvent to clean it off. If it's quite stubborn, you may have to scrape it with a softened, sharpened piece of lead, is what they used to say. But you can use like a plastic scraper. Doesn't seem to be much play in it. There's no evidence of a lip at the top of the bore either, so I think I'm alright for wear at the moment in time. It's just the carbon that seems to be causing a lack of performance. So let's clean that up and we'll resume with fitting the head. Right, so I've cleaned the top of the piston up. It's not perfect. There's quite a few scratches on there, so it's been done quite a few times before, and there's still a little bit of sort of staining and stuff around the edges of it. The important thing is, once you've done it though, is clean it off, make sure it's at top dead center, cleaning off any sort of carbon or anything like that that's loose with a solvent or light oil or something like that. So just go back down inside the barrel and then just bring it back down again and just run it around with your finger or cloth just to check that there's nothing gonna sort of get mixed up inside there, which is not good for your rings. Same goes for the actual mating surfaces where the barrel comes into contact with the underside of the head. This again, you can check it for level on a flat surface or a surface plate. If you think that it's warped, you can essentially true it up by putting on a piece of plate glass with some grinding paste on and just lap it in like you would a valve, essentially. I'll go into that into another video because it's a bit more in depth. I'll probably sort of look at that if I do one on doing a full decoke, because this is just really just for inspection. It's not decoking the engine. I've just had to do that because it would have been pointless putting on a tidy head onto a piston that was still coked up. So, right, make sure it is the right way around, like that. Now there is a trick to getting, oops, can't see it, the nuts and the washers back onto the studs, because it's a little bit fiddly, especially if access isn't great. So what I do is I thread mine onto a screwdriver and then try and do this one-handed. And just try and drop them on like that. And just repeat that for all of them, and then we'll tighten the nuts up. Alright, the nuts and washers are on, using that little trick with the screwdriver. Now it's time to tighten them up. Now, these only get tightened up to 9 foot-pounds, which isn't a lot. Also, don't go around them in a circle. Kind of try and do them diagonally. So you pull the cylinder head down onto the barrel evenly. There is a tightening sequence or diagram in the A3 Haynes manual for doing this. It pretty much is just, you know, doing them diagonally. So I always do them hand tight without the ratchet handle first. And there's a reason for this, which I'll explain. So let's with the bench, it's easier to explain. So well, not. Right, so there you go, we've got two different size nuts. Now the reason why the spanners for tightening these nuts up, that one, like that, and something like that, are different in length, is because the actual length of the spanner is kind of pretty much determines how much torque can be applied to tighten the nut up. So a big one, nut and bolt, requires a big spanner, a little one requires a little spanner. It's a very old kind of engineering principle really, is that you don't need such a big spanner to do such a small nut or bolt, because the tightening torque is much less. So with a M7, there's a spanner there to tighten up an M7 nut, like the cylinder head has. And if you look, my ratchet handle is actually longer than it, so I can actually apply more force than is necessary using the ratchet than I could a spanner, but then I can't get the spanner in there. If I look at this is another 11mm one. Again, it's shorter again. This is actually more realistic for 11mm than that one. So it's not, you know, it's very easy to over tighten these and then either snap the stud or strip the thread out. So what I tend to do is don't use a ratchet handle for doing them back up again. So do them by hand as much as you can until they're tight. And then get your torque wrench, this thing, and set it to, I think it's 9 for an A3. Do that off camera. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, it's just under 10. And then, even though this is much longer than the ratchet handle, it will click when it reaches £9. And just do the same thing, do them in order. Oops. Getting close. There you go. Yep, that's 9. It doesn't sound a lot, to be honest, compared to like maybe a car engine where you tighten up the cylinder head in like 3 different stages of, you know, like you might be doing £60, £90, and then you do like a quarter turn or a half turn. but these are only 7mm cylinder head studs, so it's very easy to sort of strip the thread or snap them. Same goes for the spark plug. There is actually a tightening torque for spark plugs, which is why you end up stripping the thread if you over tighten them, or you put them in at an angle. But again, what I tend to do is to avoid over tightening. Instead of holding it there, hold it down there, so you're not able to apply as much leverage. So there you go. Put that back in there. She's all ready to go. What you do is go for a little test ride with it, listen out for any kind of squeaking or wheezing noises, or feel for any kind of loss of pressure coming from around that joint there. If you are getting anything, then you probably will need to sort of lap that cylinder head joint in so it fits the barrel a bit better. But generally that it's only really needs doing if the head has warped, if it's overheated, or you've had some serious mechanical problems with it. But just for inspection and the engine's been running fine, that's all you need to do. But I'll cover decoking in another video because it's a bit more involved than what I've done today. So there you go, thanks for watching.